Hey, hello, and welcome to Bend the Knee, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. I am Sir Matt, the Bud Knight.
And I am Jimmy of House Nuts, and the dance has begun.
Yes, it has, Jimmy. Before we begin, this episode is brought to you by Four Cats Boutique on Etsy. You guys know we love a ton of different fandoms: A Song of Ice and Fire, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Wheel of Time, DC, Marvel, and more. So if you're looking for a good birthday present or Christmas gift, check out Four Cats Boutique on Etsy. Katie and Jordan have such a big selection. They have stickers, earrings, keychains, everything you could possibly want over there. All the stuff for the greens and the blacks. You decide. You can even hang a full, huge banner. Whatever you're into, you will find over there. Four Cats Boutique on Etsy. That's number 4, Cats with a K. And you can use a promotional code BTK10. You guys will get 10% off. Thank you for checking out Four Cats Boutique Etsy BTK10. So, guys, with that, wow. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this episode, Jimmy.
Really?
Well, not that it wasn't good, but I'm at sort of in at the crossroads of dilemma on was that the best spot to end season 1?
I think yes, in the sense that season 1 is kind of a prologue to all of this, right? I definitely agree in the fact that I think episode 8 was like the highest point of the season for me, without a doubt. But I still loved episode 9, and I actually liked 10 even more than 9. So, and a lot of the thematic stuff that Viserys talked about earlier in the season really comes to pass here. And now we see like the season opens with Rhaenyra's face, and then it also ends with her face, which is really, really symbolic and cool. So I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it, knowing that the bigger fireworks are here to come. And I think this also separates it a little bit from the fact that obviously it's a Game of Thrones show, it's a Westeros show, but it's not Game of Thrones. We aren't getting that big climax in 9 and then the fallout in 10. I mean, we kind of do, but there was even a more, in my opinion, oh shit moment here in episode 10. I like that. I like that it's kind of distinguishing itself away. I think you can make an argument then that maybe it should have its own intro instead of reusing the Game of Thrones one. Then maybe.
Well, I don't know about that,
yeah. But no, I like where we ended. I thought the final shot of her face, in kind of like what I said, the dance has
we're going
begun.
to war.
We're going to war.
Yeah, just interesting. And we'll try to keep it, and please keep it in the chat. We will stay spoiler free because people are blasting us even more over on the reviews. But I guess I'll just say, season 2 episode 1 is going to be bonkers. So prepare yourself for that. And I actually have I wanted to pull up this. Let me share this right here, and this is from Fire and Blood, although I actually was reading World of Ice and Fire, and it's exactly the same. So that's not exactly how I wanted to share that. I guess share screen window. Here we go. There we go. Just so you get that. Hopefully you can read it. It's kind of fuzzy on mine. But so this is from Fire and Blood, and I want to read the Rhaenyra birth scene and how it is presented there. So it says, on Dragonstone, no cheers were heard. Instead, screams echoed through the halls and stairwells of Sea Dragon Tower, down from the queen's apartments, where Rhaenyra Targaryen strained and shuddered in her 3rd day of labor. The child had not been due for another turn of the moon, but the tidings from King's Landing had driven the princess into a black fury, and her rage seemed to bring on the birth, as if the babe inside her were angry too and fighting to get out. The princess shrieked curses all through her labor, calling down for the wrath of the gods upon her half-brother and their mother, the queen, and detailing the torment she would inflict upon them before she would let them die. She cursed the child inside her too. Mushroom tells us, and I remember, both of the text from Fire and Blood is told through us from 2 different sources: Mushroom, a court jester, and a Maester. She cursed the child inside her too, Mushroom tells us, clawing at her swollen belly as Maester Grandis and her midwives tried to restrain her, and her shouting, "Monster, monster, get out, get out." When the babe at last came forth, she proved indeed a monster, a stillborn girl, twisted and malformed, with the hole in her chest where her heart should have been, and a stubby scaled tail, or so Mushroom describes her. The dwarf tells us that it was he who carried the little thing to the yard for burning. The dead girl had been named Visenya, Princess Rhaenyra announced the next day. With milk of the poppy had blunted the edge of her pain. She was my only daughter, and they killed her. They stole my crown and murdered my daughter for it, and they shall answer for it. So that scene, I wanted to read that because I think it's kind of a good, we've been talking for the past few weeks about like differences for people who haven't read the books. And so I thought I'd pull that up because it does go down that way. And this was a scene that I sort of knew, I knew was coming. It was actually way more intense than I thought, like way more intense than I thought, but it's actually in a way kind of toned down from the book.
Yeah, definitely a different tone to the scene, right?
Yeah.
And I think it affects Daemon and Rhaenyra in different ways. I thought that was probably the most disturbing scene we've seen this season.
Oh, by far.
And
even
really
more, I would say even more tough than episode 1's birth scene.
Yes, which it is interesting, obviously, Rhaenyra lost her mother, right? She lost her mother and a brother that day in the first episode. And then in this one, we see her lose two babes, unfortunately. So it's an interesting parallel to draw there. But yeah, that scene was brutal. I could not believe some of the shots we were getting. I was just like, okie dokie. Rough, really rough stuff. I'm sure that's going to probably resonate with a lot of people and really hit home for many viewers.
I told Teresa because she had a lot of trouble with the first birth, right? Scene. And then, gosh, there was another birth scene this season. God, Rhaenyra's other one. No, well, Rhaenyra's one where she has to carry the baby like right after she has it, and she was like, "Is this gonna be bad?" And I was like, "This one I watched because I'd watched the episode before. I was like, this one isn't as bad." This one I was like, you have to skip the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, and then you have Lena, obviously couldn't deliver, right. And then not getting the C-section. So I mean, and I know a lot of people are like, really another birth, but like you have to, this is a succession royalty tale. I mean, this is what they were doing. They were popping out kids and messing up everything as they muddied up the lines, right?
Yeah. So I mean, what do you think about the finale? Because I think maybe I'm still processing it where I'm like, I really liked it, but I'm just like, it's kind of a tough. I think it's just a tough spot to end it because everything that's going to happen, in season 2 and going forward is technically even like the next sort of chapter of Fire and Blood, as well as in the World of Ice and Fire in the books. Just did it. I don't know. It's just like this season has been so like big and powerful that I felt maybe a little underwhelmed by like just the final shot there.
Interesting. I actually really loved it. I liked where they ended. And this is always fun because me and Matt like don't talk while the episode's on. Like we literally just get on here and go live. So I never know. Right. Like we never know how we're gonna each react. I think I'm a bit higher on it than you are. This is kind of what I thought. This is kind of where I thought it would end up. And obviously the episode had leaked prior. So I didn't watch it. I didn't watch the leaked episode, but I did read, the changes or at least the more details that we were getting from this episode that we know about in Fire and Blood. So I don't know. I thought the final scene was really powerful considering the fact that the first shot of the show is, Rhaenyra's face, or maybe it's the final shot of the first episode. But I remember that Millie Alcock shot.
Right.
And I don't know, it really resonated with me. And to know that Rhaenyra was trying to go into this level-headed and for better or for worse, and then for this to happen, it was the final straw kind of deal. So,
yeah. A question here: when is season 2 coming out? Which is we will
not soon enough.
We'll definitely touch on that. Yeah. Unfortunately, over at Warner Brothers, so many things just seem to be take a very long time. It looks like probably 2024 is what I would expect. Is how long we will be waiting, but we will dive into that because I want to talk, and we want to circle back to this. What's next for Westeros, right? What's next, and what do we think will be next, since we can't do an episode prediction, but certainly a what's next. So we'll circle back to that, but let's keep diving in here to the to this episode again. Ramin Djawadi just absolutely crushes everything he like. Yeah, just, I mean, God, like
the tension in the scene with Corlys when the music was picking up. Like one thing about this episode, and I think the reason why I liked it so much, and I don't know if it's because I was on a ton of pre-workout earlier, but my heart was thumping. At the end of the episode, I felt like I kind of had ran, a marathon. And yeah, I don't know. I felt the tension the whole way through. I really did. It felt like it was kind of rolling and building just right. Like a boiling points were being reached. And I think that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about it. And that always ties back to the soundtrack for me.
Yeah. The scene where they're all taking off and the dragons going in their different direction, it's playing that sort of classic Targaryen theme. They play that. It's the exact same theme that they use for Dany in all of Game of Thrones, and actually towards the end they use it for Jon in some scenes. When Jon and Dany are flying, they play that song. So cool. And just the episode just scored, and man, another just sort of just gorgeous episode with the painted table and it being lit up, because we never saw that. We never saw it lit up right like that in Game of Thrones, and so it was so cool.
Yeah, the table might have been one of the highlights of the season for me, to be completely honest. Like seeing it lit up, I was just like, oh shit, is someone gonna? I saw someone put in the comments, by the way, they said that someone should put it on Etsy, they'd make millions, and I would definitely buy that table.
Buy one.
I'm in the market for a new dinner table. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I would pick it up too. What do we think about Daemon in this episode?
I think Daemon is.
I'm seeing some people in the chat, maybe they were sort of surprised when they're sort of surprised when it's like, okay, Daemon and Rhaenyra seem to be getting along, and then he just flat out chokes her when he finds out that there's some secret that she doesn't know about.
Bro, the only people who are like saying that this does not seem like something that he would do are ignoring the fact that we saw him beat a messenger bloody, that we saw him murder his wife. I mean, and we can debate about book Daemon, but this is show Daemon, and show canon is different than book canon. This makes perfect sense. Like, we've seen him lose it, and clearly he was not a fan that Viserys didn't tell him of his little prophecy. So I don't know. I think this is pretty consistent with everything Daemon's been throughout the season. I know some people say, hey, Daemon loves his family, he would never do such a thing. But I mean, he also didn't kill Rhaenyra. He didn't start beating her mercilessly. You know what I mean? Like, and what he did is terrible, but he did show some sort of restraint compared to like what the messenger got, or compared to what his ex-wife got. So yeah, I mean, I think Daemon's a bad person. I've thought that the whole season. And when I see people being like, Daemon he's so awesome, and yeah, he's badass. Whenever he went on his little tirade in episode 3, I was ecstatic. I loved it. However, that doesn't mean that just because you root for him in one scene that he is like some sort of moral compass by any means. I thought that scene was pretty powerful.
Yeah. Oh no, I did too. I loved it, and the fact that they keep bringing up the Song of Ice and Fire and moving forward with it, and it's going to be this key thing going forward. I cannot wait to see, because remember, this whole Song of Ice and Fire business is nowhere in the history books. Nowhere. This is all George has sort of, George Martin has sort of alluded to it. He's never really come out and like sort of said, this happens, this is how it goes, and this is how it's going to affect all these different characters. But to sort of have it be a big part of this show is going to be really cool. And are we going to get a moment that, is not at all in the books, in which Aegon tells Rhaenyra, or Alicent and Rhaenyra discuss this whole Song of Ice and Fire and why they chose to go this route? I almost thought for a second that when Otto handed her the page out of the book, that's what it was going to be.
Yeah,
like from Alice, it ended up being something else from their youth, but that's what I sort of thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and that, by the way, that page from the book is the exact kind of like delusional stuff that I expect Alicent to do in the show. But yeah, obviously the prophecy is going to play a bigger role, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out as things unfold down the road, and who knows what. But yeah, I thought Viserys feeling robbed of that, and obviously also probably mourning his brother a bit was, it's tough scene for Daemon fans, that's for sure.
Yeah,
and also like we got to be clear, like yeah, Daemon doesn't do that in the books. He might have to do other things in the books, but this is the television show.
right. It's also it's also hard to. It's also one, it is different, and two, the books are written by two different characters, and so it's a loose interpret. It's George Martin's even said several times it's a loose interpretation. Like you can't even take it verbatim, right? As to what actually sort of happens.
Yeah, and think about this, like I know you're into history and you went to school for it and stuff, but like we think about like the stories that we tell from history, and depending on where you are in the world and what classroom, the story you hear, the narrative that you hear behind the history of the facts from different perspectives totally changes based on who's telling you the story. So the way I look at it is I don't look at House of the Dragon as the true telling. I just look at it as another telling in a dramatic fashion. So I think people are, I mean, obviously, we want to see things from the book and whatnot, but like at the end of the day, just like George said in his interview, it's different canon. It's totally different. And can one of those things influence the other? Sure. But it's not going to be a 1-for-1. So,
yeah. I actually thought the Corlys Rhaenys, right? It's in the audiobooks, it's Rhaenys. And they've been pronouncing it Rhaenys as how they've been sort of.
I change it every other time just to annoy people.
Is how they've been pronouncing it in the show, which I knew would happen. Because it's funny if you go listen to the audiobooks of Game of Thrones, and I remember getting blasted so much in season 8 for this because we read the books and I'm always going back and forth, and I listen to the audiobooks, and in the audiobooks for Game of Thrones, it's one guy, Roy Dotrice, who's actually in Game of Thrones. He has a cameo in it, but he pronounces things entirely different, and sometimes he changes it book to book, and so it's just it's wild. But so Rhaenys, I will try to at least maybe pronounce it that way. Her conversation with Corlys I thought was awesome.
Yeah, I liked it too. And but we, this is something that's been consistent all season long, right? Is the fact that those two's chemistry on screen has been unimaginably good. And also I love seeing her drop tears because she has been kind of, hard to read. And she also has had to be very stern and kind of stone faced. So to see her kind of, to take the veil down and to show Corlys how she's hurting and how she feels, and to say, not you, we, I think that's important for their relationship, and also to talk about their ambitions that they had for the throne. And also Rhaenys, if you notice, wasn't bending the knee to Rhaenyra, was kind of there hanging out in the background. Right. And it was obvious that she did not feel comfortable pledging herself to Rhaenyra until she saw how she would take the news and what her next move would be. And her restraining herself to not go drop these, dragon thermonuclear bombs on all of Westeros. That is what won Rhaenys over, and I like that a lot because she kind of stayed neutral there. So,
yeah. Okay, so they end up sort of going off in their different directions, and they chose to focus this on Luke, right, who goes to Storm's End, and then Luke and Aemond. What did you think of the way they changed that? I'll pull that up in the book too, since
I know it pretty well from Fire and Blood, but pull it up just to make sure that I don't miss anything. But in Fire and Blood, it said that there are people watching from Storm's End or wherever, or Shipbreaker's Bay or whatever it was, and it is all the thing that is truly known is that two dragons danced in the sky and there was fire and yada yada yada. The only account that we have, I think Eustace says that the dragon ate Luke, right, and then killed the dragon, but the other account is that Mushroom says that Aemon cut out Luke's eyes and presented on a pillow to Boros's daughter as a present, which, if you want to take that as what happened, that's fine. You can do that if you read Fire and Blood. That's cool. But this actually gives us insight into what happened with the scene. So for me, this isn't necessarily a change. This is one of those times where it's more detail, because without a singular truth that gets placed into the true tales, which there is no, they even say that in the book. They're like, basically what we can say is that we don't know what happened. All we know at the end is that Luke died, and so did his dragon. And this is kind of getting that whole point across, the fact that dragons are not something that should have ever been trifled with, which Viserys said earlier in the season, and that we do not control these dragons. Basically says that it's a bit of a farce that we control these dragons. And I think that that's echoed here in this episode. And Aemon, making a what was ever going to happen? Matt, you grew up with brothers. How many times your brothers make you mad and you punched him in the face or hit him, and then immediately you go, what did I just do? What did I just begin? And then you're in trouble, right? So there's this feeling Aemon knows what he just did. He just started the dance. And then in the books, Otto and Alicent rip into him.
Oh, yeah, because it's stupid. I'm getting it pulled up here. So just the first line here, because then it goes into Fire and Blood, the way it's written, it's kind of all over the place. It says the tragedy that befell Lucerys Valerian at Storm's End was never planned. On this, all the sources agree. I actually sort of like that on one hand, you could make the argument that it wasn't planned, and on the other, I think you could make an argument that it was, because what's Aemon clearly is trying to, do something. What's his goal there? He's on a huge
he took
dragon.
It too far. He took it too far.
Yeah.
He wanted his eye, took it too far, ends up, messing around and finding out kind of deal, right?
Well, exactly. And it doesn't help that you just did that. And I think this will be something that they'll, isn't something that's in the books, but I think we'll get this dialogue in the show, is you'll hear when it's talked about in the future, that some of the people at Storm's End were there and they saw, whether Aemon says it was an accident or not.
That's right.
Well, I just saw you throw a dagger and say, cut out your own eye. So,
and do you think Rhaenyra's going to buy that?
No, absolutely not.
She's pissed. Rightfully so.
He definitely effed around. And
also, I don't know about you, but I love the fact that it makes the dragons seem more than just like mindless slaves, right? Like in the books, it's always kind of hinted at the fact that the dragons, there's more to them. And the Targaryens have lost a lot of that Valyrian knowledge on how to bond the dragons. It's very ambiguous on how the bonding even works. There is no concrete way of doing it. There's just some theories out there. So the fact that you actually get to see the dragons have a bit more agency is something that I really, really like. I saw some people say that they felt like Aemon didn't have agency in the scene, which I think is really silly. His agency comes from the fact that he decided to continue to antagonize Luke and ends up paying for it, and going way too far.
Yeah, okay, so here I'll pull up, let me get this pulled up again here, because some of the dialogue in the book actually is really cool. Actually, now I'm kind of wishing they had gone that route. Great comment here. I liked how they foreshadowed this way back in the episodes with the kids in the dragon pit and getting them, schooled by their teacher that they need to control their dragons or something bad could happen. Exactly. Yeah. So just some of the things here, and I'll highlight this. Just because some of this is really cool. Some of the dialogue here. It says, "Look at the sad creature, my lord." Prince Aemon called out, "Little Luke Strong, the bastard." So he did call him Lord Strong, but he didn't say anything else. Are you wet, bastard? It's raining. Or did you piss yourself in fear? That would have been like a funny, a funny line. But then you only have so much time, so they went with the eye. The whore of Dragonstone, he means. Prince Aemon strode forward and made his and so he's a little more restrained actually in the show, which is crazy. Because it's like we just saw him kill Luke essentially, or as an accident, and he throws him a dagger and says, "Cut out your own eye." And so it's interesting the balance they're doing this season. And now that we've seen the whole season, we can talk about this as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the balance they're doing of sort of staying true to the books, but at the same time playing with it just enough without really going like completely off the rails with any of the characters,
and having to add stuff, right? Like they added this scene in clearly because they're not just going to show a kind of a silhouette of dragons and then we never know what happens. Like they're diving into it. They're going to go ahead and make those decisions for this interpretation of the narrative. So they're going to add in scenes and whatnot. It's also interesting to think that, some of these accounts seem very pro Rhaenyra in the books at times, especially if mushrooms being mushroom. So it's interesting to see the other side of what maybe possibly could have happened there. So yeah, all I know is that Otto and Alicent were not pleased in the books with Aemon at all. And I don't think they're going to be very pleased with him now either. And there's a chance that they won't believe him. Like you said, like who's going to believe that? They heard that he said these things. And it might be the fact that we as the viewers and Eamon are the only ones that will ever know that. Still, absolute bonehead move for him. He's a great fighter. That doesn't mean that he's smart. There's tons of morons in the UFC. So thankfully, he doesn't have to be a genius to swing his sword.
Yeah. Here, I'll get this pulled up here. I keep closing it because I don't want to click too far ahead to spoil any of the text. But since Eric's fell, broken to be swallowed by the storm, the storm lashed waters of the bay. His head and neck washed up beneath the cliffs below Storm's End. 3 days later, to make a feast for crabs and seagulls, Mushroom claims that Prince Luceria's corpse washed up as well, and tells us that Prince Aemon cut out his own eyes and presented them to Lady Amaris on a bed of seaweed, who we haven't even met yet. But this seems excessive. Some say Vhagar snatched Lucerys off his dragon's back and swallowed him whole. Okay. And those are some. Those aren't even, the maesters, right? It has even been claimed that the prince survived the fall, swam to safety, but lost all memory of who he was, spending the rest of his days as a simple-minded fisherman. So, like, when we talk about sometimes how the books, you can't even use these books as actual representation of what happens, because it's this loosely based history in which it's just describing, well, these people say this and these people say this, and sometimes there's truth and sometimes there's not. So it's hard, especially because we had that comment about Daemon earlier. I'm like, I don't know. It's kind of even hard to say, because all of the histories of these books are two people saying this is what happened, the other person saying no, it isn't.
Mm-hmm. And then, this is a narrative retelling of the history in a way.
Exactly.
So to me, it's a lot of fun. I know a lot of people get upset whenever there's stuff added or changed in a show, but I actually think fidelity to source material is not always like the rate of that is not always indicative to how good of an adaptation it is. Some of the best scenes in early Game of Thrones are ones that they kind of threw in, like Cersei and Robert. And even more so with this show, this is nothing like adapting Game of Thrones. It's so much different because of what you just said. And that is because of the style of narrative that it is. It is not a straightforward, third person limited perspective type of deal. It's something much different. And that presents its own challenges in the adaptation. And I think that they're doing a good job with it. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. Now that this has happened and it's going to be something going forward, Aemon will carry the monkey, or Aemon Kinslayer, because that is technically what he does here. And it actually sort of raised I started thinking about this. I was like, kinslaying in A Song of Ice and Fire. I was like, when does it actually really sort of come up? There's an argument, this is way sort of in the main series as well as the books, like with Theon. And then I was kind of thinking about this, and I think this would make a great Patreon episode. Does kinslaying ever affect Tyrion? Because
I'll have to think about that.
I want to come back. Question. I want to come back to that, because I'm like, well, not really, but I don't know, maybe. But kinslaying is a big deal here, which is why people don't necessarily want it. So, and even Boris Baratheon's like, take this outside, because even to kinslay in my hall or to attack a messenger is not something I want, in my hall.
Yeah, Boris Baratheon getting some screen time. I mean, I was excited about this, and I wish his voice would have been a little bit more raspy, but I got to say, I think the look suited him just fine. I am not surprised that Boros didn't know how to read. That tracks with the Baratheons, I would say. My favorite house. Pretty good. I enjoyed it.
A lot of you guys, I asked you guys in the comment and the thing here, rated out of 5 stars. We're getting a lot of 5 stars. Just some other things here. Did they keep Aemon's scene in the hall more mild than the books to avoid his character becoming unlikable to the fans?
Yeah, I can see that, like them wanting to tone it down just a little bit, so it's not like, because there are going to be people out there, because this is how humans are. There are going to be some people that are sympathetic with the fact that Vhagar gets attacked by Arax. I always forget Luke's dragon's name. I apologize. Yeah. But gets attacked and does this, and he's like, no, Vhagar, no, so there are going to be people who are sympathetic towards Aemon. Like, that is going to happen. So I think, it's probably to follow a balance just a little bit, especially because you have to remember, we have a whole lot to go still, and these characters are going to change even more, and they're also not going to get away from this trauma that they're experiencing or the mistakes that they're making scotch-free. Like they are going to absolutely be paying for these things and changing as we go through the seasons. So when you look at the bigger picture, I think that there's a lot of stuff that could end up mattering that we're seeing here in season 1 that made us seem like something that we glossed over, or was just a really subtle moment. One of those things, and I want to ask you, Matt, about this, because this is the only thing I really didn't like about the episode. I liked it, but I'm not sure if we needed it. And that was Daemon singing to the dragon.
Oh no, I love that.
I loved
awesome.
it, but like,
did we need it? Yes, absolutely.
We needed
100%. No, 100%, because we needed it. We needed it because it shows that Daemon, and we've seen it a lot this season. Daemon's always like, Daemon's been like, he claims an egg for himself. He claims this, and then we get that line, dragons. It wasn't prophecies that made us who we are. It's dragons. And he's actually, there's been this sort of undercurrent really this whole season, and that when it comes to dragons, Daemon actually kind of knows more than anybody else. And he's the one saying, we have this dragon, I can go claim this one. And it is going to be a big deal going forward, is that, to be fair, Daemon really is, out of all of the Targaryens right now, he is the one that knows by far the most about the dragons. And they're really pushing that out there. And I think that's going to be a big thing that, isn't in the books really, but they've been kind of hyping it a little bit with Otto talking about, hey, we got Vhagar. Like, this is a big deal, is going to be, they have Vhagar, but we have more dragons. And Daemon is kind of like the dragon commander. So I think I love the scene, and I thought it was super useful.
Yeah, I thought it was cool, and I actually have this in my notes. That's why I wanted to bring this up, because talking about like things that are going to play out over the seasons based on what happened here. And I think that this scene will probably, like, we're going to see that dragon again, clearly. So they wanted to introduce it here. What dragon was that? Was that Viserys?
That's Vermithor, which was old King Jaehaerys's dragon.
Jaehaerys's, yeah. Okay.
Right.
Sick.
Damon the dragon with the dragon whisperer.
What about Rhaenyra getting crowned? I got chills.
That was sweet.
I got chills, man.
That was very, very cool. And now she carries the crown of her father, King Viserys, which is interesting. I'm working on a crown, and I have an old crown video, but I have a new one coming up, which is going to like tie into like the whole to the whole thing.
What about the parallel of the kind of outside of Dragonstone like bridge scene?
Yes,
Rhaenyra flies back and lands. I love that. There's something my wife picked up on as well, and she was like, "That's sick. I love it."
I know. I'm sure there are people on Twitter that are like, well, "Hold on, let me get this straight." Right. So just like the total casual fan who doesn't read the books or anything. So let me get this straight. So last week, Rhaenys is in the throne room, and all she has to do is say Dracarys, and she wipes out all the bad guys. It's like, yeah. So now Rhaenyra flies behind Otto Hightower, his group of people, and all she has to do is say Dracarys, and we immediately take all those people off the board. So it's like literally 2 back-to-back scenes in which they're like, are we gonna see dragons kill people? So I am glad that we did get I'm not glad, but because I'm team black, but I was glad that we at least did get sort of a dragon battle to end the show.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's obvious that Rhaenyra is thinking ahead, right? Using the prophecy, but also saying like, if I burn all of this stuff and everyone, and I burn all this infrastructure, like what does that make my reign look like? Not to mention the fact that I feel like there's a lot to be said about that miscarriage scene and how Daemon and Rhaenyra are both in mourning for it, and how they end up reacting later in the episode. I think that all kind of has like a ripple effect throughout here.
Yeah. Okay, now a question for you. This is going to go into some weird territory here, because I think we've talked about this episode specifically, and we can dive into a little bit. Obviously, we'll come back and we'll do like a big just episode breakdown, as well as at some point we're gonna have to sort of look at some of the things we've learned in this season, and does it tie into at all Game of Thrones? And so just maybe I'll pitch this one to the chat. So was like the Vhagar sort of losing control, because we haven't really heard that much in the books, of like the dragon sort of like acting perhaps on the writer's ambitions, whether it's what the writer wanted to do or not. I mean, Dany burns down King's Landing. All I'm saying is, was that a Daenerys decision, or was that now maybe a Drogon decision?
Yeah, it is interesting because the times that we've seen the dragons not obey is like when the good queen wanted to go beyond the wall, and dragons like, nah,
in the
we're
books.
not doing, yeah, we're not doing that. And then obviously even Dany doesn't have good control of her dragons for a very long time. Especially Drogon and A Dance with Dragons in the books. So there has always been this little bit of agency granted to the dragons, and the fact that they are, there's a lot more to them. So I like that they leaned into this. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I didn't know. I thought it was cool too. I guess I'm just wondering, if it's gonna be like, are some people maybe gonna? I haven't about to check Twitter, but I bet it's going to be a new argument that like, well, look, Dany didn't actually want to burn down King's Landing. It was Drogon that did it. Just like how Aemon didn't actually want to attack Luke,
but we were with her. I guess
Vhagar, right?
Yeah.
I mean, is that kind of like my dog accidentally ate my homework? It was like my dragon accidentally ate my nephew. It's like, no, I didn't do it. Vhagar did.
Vhagar did it. Vhagar is so cool, by the way.
Vhagar is well, I don't know. I'm kind of out on Vhagar now.
Yeah, no, Dragon's agency is absolutely included. Because I see this. Dragon's agency is obviously alluded to in the books, which is something they're drawing from. So, and even in the show, Drogon is very wild in Game of Thrones for a very long time.
Okay, I guess maybe we do kind of talk a little bit about the season as a whole. What do we think of now that we're done? Now that that's the final episode of the season. What do you think about season 1 of House of the Dragon?
I loved it, dude. I thought it was great. I thought it definitely qualmed a lot of my fears. I think there was some bumps along the way. I don't think that this is a perfect season by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's the best fantasy show on TV by a long shot. And yeah, absolutely nothing about it that would make me not want to watch season 2. Clearly, I'm all on. I'm aboard the hype train at this point. But yeah, I really, really liked it. I think that there were some really interesting hurdles for them to get by with the time skips and kind of like this big historical prologue that they were setting up, and knowing that they kind of went back and forth on whether or not they should have used the young actresses and like do that first 5 episodes. I am glad that they did. I thought Emma Darcy's performance this episode was the strongest that she's delivered, and I think Emma Darcy has been very, very strong
as Rhaenyra, right?
As Rhaenyra. Yeah, I think that we have a lot to look forward to going into season 2 for sure.
Yeah, I absolutely loved episode. I loved this whole season, and honest to God, it's one of the strongest opening seasons of any show I think I've ever seen. I mean, I think it's hard to even compare like openings, like season 1s to this season. Obviously, like Game of Thrones would be your sort of natural one, but it's kind of, I guess, in a way it's also unfair because like Game of Thrones, was doing this like new thing that like nobody had ever done to that sort of scale, right? I mean, there had been fantasy or even like medieval TV shows that had been successful, but certainly nothing like the success that Game of Thrones saw. But yeah, I mean, but obviously this is able to sort of piggyback off of that. But absolutely loved it. For me, this is honestly, as I would rank it in there with like season 3 or maybe even season 4 of Game of Thrones. Yeah, man, it is really, really, really good, and it achieved things that it had hurdles and obstacles that it had to even overcome to even just be good.
That's fair,
right? You had the weight of season 8 on it, which is like okay, the taint,
which we're still feeling,
right? It had the taint of season 8, on it, as well as sequel shows, successor shows, whatever you want to call it, there's not a lot of them that even stick around or even do good. I mean, or sometimes they try to reboot something or revitalize something. Like there's really only a handful of shows. I mean, it feels like we are maybe in this age now where we're getting more shows that sort of can pull it off, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like spin-off shows, stuff like that. It's really, really, really hard to do just because people are so invested in one and you go to that next one. It's really difficult. So it had that going against it as well as all the competition that's going on right now. On my Star Wars channel, I just had to do a breakdown of why Andor isn't doing well.
Yeah, which for all intents and purposes is supposedly a really great show.
It's a great show, but there's so much competition now because it has to go against House of the Dragon and Rings of Power and She-Hulk and the NFL. And so it's just like, it's a great show, but it's just getting buried by all this, by all this competition. And House of the Dragon, same thing. It had to go up against another mega show releasing at the same time, as well as, like Andor and all this other stuff, as well as the NFL. I mean, this show goes directly against Sunday Night Football, which is one of the hardest things to absolutely go against. And ratings from all the accounts and everything that we've seen have been absolutely great and through the roof. So
yeah, definitely successful. I mean, from a numbers standpoint.
Yeah, super successful. It's hard for me to honestly even pick sort of like a favorite episode because there's so many moments, and we'll have to come back and we'll have to like narrow down like collectively put together our sort of top 10 moments and do like a like structured like breakdown of that, because I think there's so many great options to even pull from. But if you just off the top of your head, now that we're we haven't rewatched the season or anything, but like favorite episode, Jimmy, and favorite moment of the season?
Oh, without a doubt, it has to be episode 8, and it is Viserys' walk and his announcement and him sitting that damn throne and Daemon putting the crown on his, that whole thing. The whole thing. That was the best. And like that's the thing. I think with this season, I'm more of like a season 1 or 2 of Game of Thrones, maybe a season 6 as well. It didn't reach the 3 and 4 for me yet, but episode 8 and the moments with Viserys, I think were as good as any other moment in Westeros TV for me. So like, you see what I mean? Like the highs are super duper high for me. And I have only good expectations, but definitely episode 8 and Viserys' walk was just incredible.
Best moment is when House Valerian entered the throne room in episode 5. That was a pretty sweet. That was a sick.
That was dope.
That was super sweet. Team Daemon. No harassment of the writers, please. Yeah. Let's see what else we got going on here. For me, man, favorite episode. Like it is sort of easy to just go episode 8, but then I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just a schlock for the hype and the excitement. And even though Daemon and Rhaenyra weren't even in it, episode 9's pretty sick. Like,
say it with your chest. Tell them.
When Rhaenys is the beast beneath the boards and just wrecking all of those traitorous people.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was you were doing your chat the other day. Yeah. Because Jimmy does on his channel, Fantasy Nuttwork. Go check it out. You've been doing breakdowns in the middle of the week on Wednesdays, just going through like what we had, sort of just an open conversation. And I was in there chatting, and I was like, first of all of those people that were chanting for Aegon are traitors. Okay. And they got what they deserved. Okay. So I was
how immoral of you, Matt.
Immoral? No, man. They were traitors to the crown. Okay. They were chanting a false dragon. Okay. So man. I have if you're a traitor, I have nothing. I don't want anything to do with you. Okay.
I'll tell you what, me and you liked episode 9, and we talked about it. We kind of talked why we felt it made sense for Rhaenys. And then, I always check out other commentators' points of views. I don't necessarily go to forums anymore and that kind of thing, because there's a lot of that hive mind. So, I like to go to people who I know have been critical in the past of things that, have fallen flat. And it was like pretty unanimous that I felt like most of the people that I respect the opinions of were with us, that episode 9 did make sense, in fact, and that it was really, really good. So for me, I was kind of, I was in the Twilight Zone after, because I'm seeing all this discourse on the internet about how maybe the ending wasn't actually as great as we thought it was, and yada yada yada. But after a lot of time sitting on it and checking out other things, I'm like, you know what? No, I'm with you, Matt. It was awesome.
Yeah. Man, episode 3 with the crab feeder where Daemon basically rushes him was pretty awesome. Rhaenyra with the stag, I thought was super cool. The white stag, to show like she's sort of the true, the true heir. Man, even Lena Valerian's death was kind of powerful, where she's like,
yeah, that got me, to be honest.
Where she went out her way, which is, with her dragon, and Vhagar didn't want to do it, but he's a traitor to the crown, so that's what he did. I mean, now he's attacking Luke and killing Luke, and Luke's the right thing. So, also, I mean, Vhagar was like Visenya Targaryen's. Okay, I mean, it wasn't like Aegon's dragon. So I think I'm anti Vhagar now. I gotta look up who's all rode him.
You're anti Vhagar?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, man.
I mean, she at least looks dope, though. Can we agree with that? Her being like
Yes.
half sea beast almost is so sick.
Yeah, let me look up exactly who all rides Vhagar, because it's like from like who all rides Vhagar. Let's see this.
So we know Aemon, and we know Lena, right?
And Visenya Targaryen. Well, the wiki's crashing because everyone's.
Yeah, you're not. I was gonna say you might not be able to pull it
hard.
Up. And we don't want to go. We don't want to go into any other generations or anything, right? We got to be
right. Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah. I'm trying to think of some of the other cool moments in the episode.
How about the sapphire eye from Aemon?
Yes. And did you notice that they have changed his thing in the opening, where it does have a sapphire now?
Does it? I did not notice that.
Yes. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. People have said that it. Hold on, somebody has a great comment. Courtesy of Vhagar got big by eating a strong diet.
Reddit finally did something noteworthy. Damn.
But yes, the opening has changed a little bit. I'm sure other people far more experienced than myself have gone through and broken it down, but I saw some people point that out, and I did notice. Episodes 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10 were all at least 9 out of 10s.
Says Sputnik. All right. Okay. Definitely enjoyed this season.
Here. My favorite moment is when Rhaenyra was crowned king.
Queen.
Jason said,
how dare you?
Excuse me. Well, I mean, she could be king, right? I mean, I don't know. She's the ruler. Whatever she wants to be. And Jason says episodes are too short and the books are being betrayed again.
I guess, dude.
Yeah, the episodes are a little bit longer, but I can see I to that point though. We can talk about the time jumps, because now that we've seen season 1, does the time jumps kind of make some things feel constricted because you're shifting a lot of characters?
Oh yeah, of course. Like pacing's going to be is definitely going to feel a little bit wonky at times, and there's some arguments that you can make that I think that especially episode 6 is episode 6 when Larys kills his family, right? I think that like a lot of people wanted a lot of that stuff to happen over time, so like you kind of look at that and. We have to go back and watch the season, which I know I'm going to, and start looking at where they had divvied up time and say, okay, well, what could have maybe been moved around or cut to maybe give that 2 episodes? Like that definitely could have worked. And that was part of the trials and tribulations that the season had to go through to get through the time period that they needed to get to where they want. But like without a doubt, especially with the final scene, you can tell now that they are about to start telling the story that they always intended to tell. From what I understand, Condell wanted to start at this point and tell the dance from here, and George kind of guided him into the fact that he was like, no, you really need to tell like how we got here. So very daunting of a task, I think, for the crew.
Yeah, I maybe it wouldn't have been I mean, I thought it was handled really well, all the time jumps. I do think for the casual viewer, I could see how it would be jarring, especially because if it were just Rhaenyra and Alicent and like, Lane, like if it's like there was only say like one big cast change between the time jumps, I don't know if it would have been, maybe for some of the people that have been saying like, oh hey, they find it jarring.
Yeah.
But we did sort of jump from like, okay, Rhaenyra and Alicent are now older, and like Laenor is older, and then it's okay. Well, then you have Aegon and Aemon and all the kids, and then we jump again, and you only had like them for 2 episodes. So I could see how I can see how people could find that, say, like, jarring.
Yeah, but actually, if you look at the ratings online, which generally are based more off a casual viewer, the episodes have actually gone higher up in the average as the season has went along. So I feel like even though the time jumps and stuff were jarring, they didn't lose people like I thought they could.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that it affected it at all. I'm just saying for the people out there that are like, oh, I understand what you're saying is what I.
Oh yeah, definitely. But now we're settled.
I'm saying.
Right. Now we're settled.
Yeah. Now there's really no more time jumps. Actually, kind of looking at Fire and Blood, man, I'm actually beginning to wonder how they're actually going to turn this into 4 seasons. I'm starting to think I think you could almost end this, and I guess because we're not going to have a lot of time jumps, but I'm starting to think, man, you could really knock this out in 3.
I think 4 would give it a lot of time to breathe, especially if you're going to do a lot of the aftermath stuff. So, I don't know. I think 4 seems to be a good spot, and I would like them to be a little bit more methodical in season 2. Now that we kind of got through the time jump, so I think you're going to expect a lot more dialogue going forward too. I saw some people feel like this episode actually needed a little bit more dialogue, and I don't necessarily disagree.
Yeah, this was. It wasn't like there wasn't necessarily a lot of action, but there was just a lot of showing, not saying.
Yeah, which is cool, right? Like that's definitely one way of telling the story. So,
yeah, Jason here says, I think the ending shot with Rhaenyra was very powerful. I wonder if there could have been a different way to get there.
Yeah, there definitely could have been a different way. Yeah, it just depends on, which way is better.
Yeah, and where they decided to go with it. But I mean, I liked this episode. I think for me, I'm at like, this episode for me was probably a 4 out of 5 star episode, or maybe even like a 3.5. Now again, it's still a great episode, but I don't know. For me, I just maybe it's just because I know what's going to happen.
But I also think it's interesting because but you also said that you liked it as much as season 3 and 4, like the season, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, but we're talking about the whole season. I mean, just because the finale, just because this episode to me felt maybe like a 7 out of 10 or 7.5 out of 10. Well, if you still average it out, like all the other were like 5 stars. So,
yeah, fair.
By the averages, I'm still with this at like this whole season for me is like, on average, it's probably like a 4.8 star out of 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I thought episode 1 was like as perfect as you could make it. For everything that it had to do. Episode 2, remember, we were kind of like, it's a little slow, but you're building. Episode 3 was awesome. Like the shots in episode 3 in the opening, when the guy is like, "Hail Prince Daemon," and then boom, he like lands, and like the dragon just torching everything, and then the shot of Daemon at the end was so awesome. And then the beginning of the, I can't be influenced by how they try to make Alicent seem nice, right? I gotta kind of remember what team I'm on here. Right? When she's like, "Oh, childbirth isn't so bad." Oh, really?
Oh, really, Alicent?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, like, there are just so many epic moments. But no, I would still say this, to me, is still probably as good as season 3 of Game of Thrones for me.
Yeah, see, I think I'd put it in that season 1 to 2, just because, and part of it is because we have foresight. I think that definitely plays a bigger role than we probably even imagine, right?
Right. Well, and hindsight of thinking back on just
Sure.
how awesome Game of Thrones was. And sometimes
Yeah.
maybe is it that season 3 and 4 of seasons 1 through 4 of Game of Thrones are really as absolutely top tier amazing as they are, or do we sort of like be skewed a little bit by the other episodes, the other seasons where we're like, as it starts to go down a little bit, we're like, oh no, does it then heighten the seasons even more?
I don't know, dude. Seasons 1 through 4 were
Well, I'm not
like,
saying they're not. I'm not saying they're great. I'm just saying we might hype them even further.
I feel like I saw a push to actually kind of rip them down in a way. Like people are like, actually season 4 wasn't that good. And they try to go back and make sure to deconstruct the whole thing. It is interesting. I do think that the show gets just in general will always have such a critical eye on it. Even if never mind, I won't say that part. But there are always going to be people who are voicing their critiques of this show. And I do wonder what this crowd now would think of season 1 through 4 if it aired today. I have my thoughts about how they would receive it, but
you think it would be received worse than it was?
I think it would still be extraordinarily high, some of the best television ever, but I think you would see a lot more of the online communities probably not pleased.
Well, yeah. Well, but that's a sign of the times changing and things change. But I thought that I mean, like sometimes that happens. I mean,
do you feel like media literacy is going up in the world or down?
Oof. I don't know. I think it's just going in totally different I think it's just going in all kinds of different directions.
Yeah. It's definitely an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, I mean, now we live in this world where like it's kind of crazy to think like Instagram, when Game of Thrones launched, Instagram didn't exist. In what season 1 of Game of Thrones, Instagram wasn't a thing.
Yeah, it's wild.
I think Instagram was like 2014 is when it first came out. TikTok obviously didn't exist, and
it's a totally different audience now. I mean, obviously a lot of repeat offenders, right? But there is a whole new generation now and a whole different way of interacting with the show. And actually, I think you could say the Game of Thrones was that first show to really hit social media. Like it was the first social media hype show in a lot of ways. Obviously, there was stuff before this, but this is the one that it caught the zeitgeist.
Right. Well, I mean, it's like imagine if The Sopranos had come out, when Twitter had been around. That show would have been canceled in like 2 seconds. Like, I mean, like it's like as having just watched it, I was like, there's that show would not exist in today's television. And that's like in theory the best show ever. Which I want to do. I want to do another thing too. Now that I've seen it, Jimmy's like, you have to watch it. You have to plow through the Sopranos, and I did. So now we can do the topic of, is The Sopranos the best TV show ever? Because awards wise, it's Game of Thrones. So we should do the
HBO tier list,
the head-to-head comparison. Okay, well, there is no predictions for next week because it's off.
There is no next week.
It is. There is no next week. So what's next for Game of Thrones? Jimmy, what do you think we will see? So we know actually Tuesday we're getting a new book, which is kind of a new version of Fire and Blood. Really, it's going to be kind of like the World of Ice and Fire book. So at least that may have some new details in it. We don't know. Then, of course, if it does take 2 years to get House of the Dragon, will we see the Jon Snow prequel show in that time period?
I think you'll probably hear something about Snow in December when they do Game of Thrones Con in Los Angeles. I wanted to go, but it's not going to happen. But Kit Harington was not on the original bill last year before they canceled it. I think it's at least likely. I would say there's a shot that you'll hear something about that. And it'll be interesting to see exactly how that goes over, because there's a lot of people who don't want it. So I'll be curious. Of course. I mean, why not? Like, it doesn't hurt me to do it. Let's see it.
Right.
I'm always in the wine. I'm always in the let's see and then make a judgment. I'm always in that camp.
So I think we'd obviously know. The show has not even been sort of officially greenlit yet. Mm-hmm. And I think we would know if it was sort of in more than just development, right? There's a difference of being in development and being in production or filming. So the likelihood of us seeing that, it's what's probably going to happen is, unless they get it written, filmed, and edited, before middle of next year, then I don't think we will see it before House of the Dragon season 2, which leaves the other thing out there. By season 2 of House of the Dragon, which could be, let's say 2024, let's say it's the same time, just for sake of argument, August of 2024. By August of 2024, will we have Winds of Winter?
I've said for many years, November 2024. Why? And you can quote me, it'll probably be wrong, but that's my hope. And the Giants are winning, so here's the hope.
Let's go.
Here's the hope.
Exactly.
Could you imagine, like, if we got wins in the next year?
Jimmy and I did a thing on Patreon, and we broke it down, and pretty much you can go back and look at a lot of times that that George books release coincide with the New York Giants, not so much the Jets, but the New York Giants success, right? 2000, he released a book. What happened in 2000? The Giants went to the Super Bowl. 2007, he released a book. What happened in 2007? Or no, it wasn't 2007. 2011, he released a book. What happened in 2011? Giants went to the Super Bowl. So I'm just saying, they just won again, right? They're 6-1.
I'm rooting for him, just solely for the purpose that if it motivates Germ. All right,
right. So for Winds of Winter, to come out, what has to happen is when the minute George finishes the book, he has said from the minute it's finished, he said you probably wouldn't even see it. It would be 6 months before it actually hit books or hit shelves, because it has to go to an editor, then to go to a publisher and everything. So that means if Game of Thrones or season 2 of House of the Dragon, let's say August of 2024, that means George will have to have Winds of Winter done August by January of 2024. So will we have Game of Thrones, or will we have Winds of Winter by will he have it say it's done by January 2024?
No, sticking with my November. Sticking with November.
No. So then he would have to finish it in March?
I think he'll. Well, I did say release, didn't I? Damn it.
Right. Yeah. So released would be March, and then add some months.
Yeah, probably. We'll go with March.
So we're in the window. So we're saying January to March of 2024.
Yeah.
He'll say it's done.
I mean, I hope so. I surely hope so. Because me and you, folks, I know House of the Dragon is concluding, but me and Matt are not concluding anything. We're going to continue pushing through. We're doing the chapter by chapter reread of A Storm of Swords. We'd love to have you guys along. And let me tell you what, if Winds of Winter gets announced,
oh yeah,
all hell breaks loose.
Winds of Winter Wednesdays will be a thing. Okay, that'll be. Yeah,
I'm quitting my job when that happens.
Yeah, that will be a thing. So exactly. So we'll spend the next few weeks covering the new book that comes out, which is just going to be, it's sort of like the World of Ice and Fire book, which I'm not going to pull it out from my shelf because every time I do, I knock everything over. I should just leave it over here so I can be like, hey, this is what it looks like. But I'll have the new book. So it won't go on the shelf. It'll just sit right there so I can pick it up easily. So, right. So we'll have that to certainly dive into. That comes out this week. Then there's going to be our reread where we just actually are at the very beginning of A Storm of Swords. And then once we finish A Storm of Swords, who knows? We may do a boiled leather read, which I've always wanted to do, which is a dance with dragons and Feast for Crows kind of go back and forth. And so you can read it that way. And that's how I wanted to do it. And that's how I always do it. But by the time House of the Dragon season 2 comes out in potentially 2024, who knows? Maybe I kind of want to do this is just lofty ambition right here, but we have 2 years. I kind of want to do a rewatch of Game of Thrones.
I would be so down to do a rewatch of Game of Thrones.
Yeah. So comment here. So where are you doing the reread on Discord? So we just it's the podcast episodes. Yep. You can find them all on Apple or anywhere you find the podcast episodes. We literally have all of. So Ezra and I did all of World of Ice and Fire. We did all of Game of Thrones, Clash of Kings, and now we're into like the first 3 episodes of Storm of Swords. And Jimmy, you were on, I think, 2 of those episodes already.
Yeah,
So
I did House of the Undying with Ez back in the day. I think it's my favorite chapter in the series. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, where we're doing it live. We're doing it here, right here on the podcast.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. And then I take those and clips of these get put up here, and we also have over on Patreon. Jimmy and I did an episode like last week, and we have plenty more coming as well. But there's for a lot of you new people in here, there's already like 100 episodes over on Patreon that you have access to if you sign up over there, which is kind of crazy to think about. But just breaking down like the deepest theories and stuff like that. But now Jimmy's on board, so we got to dive back into some of those theories because I haven't talked some of those with Jimmy, and so down to dive back into those. So with all that, guys, that's what we'll be diving into. Very, very excited. Even though, you know, we just finished House of the Dragon, we'll come back and we'll do sort of a season review and dive into all of that. You know, I want to reread just so because I haven't done it with Jimmy. I want to reread Dunk and Egg because it's just it's just so good. it is just absolutely so good. So with all of that, guys, as always, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to check out extra content on Apple Premium, which is back up and running. There was I had to do some shifting around there, and Patreon. You can check any of that stuff out there as well. There's all sorts of extra clips on YouTube as well, and dedicated theories and episodes, as well as we have a TikTok you can check out. So with all of that, we will see you guys soon. And remember that by 2024, potentially January, Winds of Winter is coming.